Let's go. Let's go. We're going.
Okay. Introduction. Joining us in progress. Adam threw out a really cool term.
Wait. Are we introducing ourselves yet?
Oh, we could. But truth hygiene. Remember, let's go back to truth hygiene in a minute. Okay. Right. So you go first.
Should we say what this is called?
Yeah. You go. It's your name.
Yeah, because I like the name. So we're calling this Hammergarten, like kindergarten,
but with hammer.
Yeah, with hammer throwing.
Yeah,
I love the name for a whole bunch of reasons.
Me too.
Yeah.
So Adam Kriz named this Hammergarten, and I'm Lance Deal. He's going to talk about me, but I'm going to talk about Adam. Adam is the most meticulous trainer of hammer throwing that I've ever seen. He was my first collegiate athlete that I coached at the University of Oregon. He ended up winning the Pac-10s that year, and he'd won it the year before. And he was an All-American. He got 5th at NC2As the senior year in the hammer, and he got 8th at USA's a little while after that. And he is a exercise physiologist. He teaches anatomy and physiology at Forest Grove High School, and he's fired up, and it's really cool to be here with him, hopefully sharing some hammer knowledge.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction, Lance.
Well, you're very welcome.
All right, and I get to introduce Lance now, which is pretty fun. So this is Lance Deal. Let's see, 4-time Olympian, Olympic silver medalist in 1996 in the hammer throw, world record holder in the weight throw. How I don't even know how many national titles do you have?
I think 21. With the weight, between the weight and the hammer, 21. But that's not counting in 19. Oh, I forgot. I always forget about this one. That's not counting in 1980, a junior national title in the discus.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I never knew that one. I never knew you were a junior national champion.
I was a junior national meet record holder.
Really?
For about 3 years.
Yeah. So I was a junior All-American in the hammer as well.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. After year 1. Look at that.
I think I remember that.
So you, let's see, after retiring from throwing, you were coach at University of Oregon for 7 or 8 years.
Yes, something like that.
And then what was your title after that? You continued working for U of O
My title after that was the director of track and field venues and program support for the U of O, which means it was basically director of Lance's stuff. So
it's not a bad gig.
It was pretty good.
And somewhere in there, you became an inventor, a fabricator, and creator of some of the most awesome, coolest hammer cages I've ever seen.
Well, thank you. And a massage therapist.
So, okay. So what we're trying to do here is basically we had the same coach. I was fortunate enough to be to train with you actually when I first came to University of Oregon. We had the same coach in Stuart Toger. You trained with him for 19 years. Is that right?
That seemed right. Yeah. 80, no, maybe not. 85 to 2002.
Yeah.
17 maybe. 17 or anyway.
So I trained with him for 7 or 8, 9 years, somewhere in there. And he's the only coach. Well, I mean, his you were my coach, but his philosophy is the only philosophy I know in hammer throwing.
Right.
And we want to just share this philosophy about hammer throwing. And so we're going to kind of do it in as many hands-on. Well, okay, here's the plan. I'm going to be out coaching hammer throwers on Sundays or more. If people want to throw with me more, I'm going to do it. I'm rounding up recruits at Forest Grove High School. I got some people interested in some other high schools, and we're just going to start throwing. And we're going to take videos. We're going to hopefully watch videos, or unless we get onto something better than that, and just start walking through the concepts of this training process that you and I went through.
Yeah. Great.
And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, nothing. I'm just saying, I think it's going to be, I'm really excited about it. And I was just wondering, yeah, so hopefully there's going to be a little comic relief and a lot of when Adam and I get together, should we talk to the people in the ether, or should we talk to each other?
I think just talk to each other, don't you think?
So the cool thing.
Yeah, I always think that sounds weird when we start talking to. Well, I guess that's what we've been doing. It's weird. We don't normally introduce ourselves like this to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be well. And with my memory, it might not be a bad idea, but okay. So one of the great things that happens with you and me is we start going off on tangents, and you never know where they go. And there's some really cool stuff. I once thought, and we've talked about it before, is that one of the greatest regrets that I have in having access to Stuart. Yeah, I don't know. Did we say his name? Stuart Toger. It was our coach, and the access that I had, I didn't take advantage of. What I really should have done was go to breakfast with him once a week, and put a camera right here and record every single conversation, because he would just go, and in an hour conversation, it was all great, but there was always 5 minutes that, like, oh my God, that's going to change somebody's life.
Yeah, it would oscillate back and forth between the specific biomechanics of a Russian hammer thrower that I never heard of to there's aliens walking among us.
I was going to say Freemasons, but maybe.
Oh, whatever. Yeah. And it was just, it was as much, they were just, playful is the wrong word. They weren't, I don't know what else to call them. They were just playful conversations. It was no boundaries to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go off on our first tangent, because the videos that I got for this week are just of my kids throwing. So I have a 13-year-old daughter, a 12-year-old son, an 11-year-old daughter, and a 6-year-old daughter that I took out hammer throwing. Which my skills pyramid, I added a few more blocks below that. Anyway, so here, just about tangents that I thought was just really, really cool. My 13-year-old has gone into like this. She's a really great kid. She wakes up early on Saturdays and Sundays to do her homework.
Wow.
Because it stresses her out. She just doesn't like being stressed out by homework. She just wakes up early and does her homework. She's that type of 13-year-old, but she's gone kind of quiet, kind of silent over the last year. Everything's just internalized. And it's hard getting a conversation going with her. And so she's super into Star Wars, like unhealthily into Star Wars, I think. And so I don't know if you've been watching the Book of Boba Fett. So the Book of Boba Fett is, anyway, the story, but there's this black saber in there. And the black saber gets heavier the harder you try to swing it. Yeah. And so I told her, it's like, well, that sounds like hammer throwing. And she goes, really? Yeah, that's exactly how hammer throwing works. She goes, can we go out and throw hammer? Wow. And that's not even the cool thing. So then we started, so she's trying to write a comic book for her eighth grade project. And it's basically copying a Star Wars story. She's stressed out about it. She doesn't want to plagiarize, just really likes the story. And so I started talking to Joseph Campbell started talking about Joseph Campbell to her, who was the guy that helped write the original 3 Star Wars episodes 4, 5, and 6, who I think I learned from you. You told me about Joseph Campbell because
and Stuart and I learned about Joseph Campbell at the same time.
Yes. And so Joseph Campbell and Star Wars came up at practice regularly. I mean, it was not a rare occurrence. She got so excited about Joseph Campbell, I ordered her The Power of Myth and the Here with a Thousand Faces. She took them with us. I gave her the Book of 5 Rings by Miyamoto Musashi on how to be a samurai. She started reading that, and all of a sudden she will not shut up. This last it was like the first time my teenage daughter and I have just like sat down and had like soaring conversations.
Nice.
All with these, like, just because of the tangents we talked about with hammer throwing. Like the tangents are important. And so,
yes.
And that's our first one, I guess. first one in the bank. Yeah. And so I like this format because of me working with essentially beginning throwers, and talking about it with you, because I think you are you can comment on things at such a high level of hammer throwing. And I think you and I both agree that like our system of throwing will work for beginners. It'll work for masters athletes. It'll work for college athletes, Olympic athletes. Like,
I mean, every year we'd go back to the basics. We would every single year for however many years. The first week we'd go back to the same drill that I did the first day that I got to Eugene.
Yep.
And, and the Russians would kind of make fun of us and say, "Oh yes, we do not do these things. Those are for beginning thrower." And I was beating them when they were saying that. So, no, it's not yes, it is for beginning throwers, and everybody's a beginning thrower.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Well, and it was the one of the most memorable experiences for me is when in between the track season being done for college and when I went to junior nationals, I was going over to train with you and I think it was Travis Nutter at the time, over at Alton Baker Park. And so this is late in the season. This is in June. And Stuart was telling you and me the same things. You were getting ready for whatever championship Nike tour series you were doing or whatever. And I was getting ready for junior nationals, and he was telling us the same thing. I think he even used me as an example for you. He says, "See how he does that? Yeah. You should do." Or anyway, he's probably just trying to needle you, or
yeah, no, that he just did that to piss me off. It worked.
Yeah. And so where I'm kind of at, I'm 41 years old, and I know for a fact, it's like I'm never going to have a collegiate coaching job. Like I'm not going to be a collegiate track coach. Like I'm not going to try to win and train NCAA, All-American hammer throwers. It's not going to happen for a whole bunch of reasons. Mainly because my life is too good as a teacher. Yeah. I'm not gonna quit this gig. And so I think this is just what I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to be working with beginning hammer throwers and then talking to you about how it applies to the big leagues.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think that sounds pretty cool. I think
so too.
Yeah. This is kind of a lull in the conversation. Can I show you one of the videos?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to show my 6-year-old because I think it's going to set the tone for the podcast here. There you go. There's Ruth. Okay, so hopefully the audio works here because this is how I feel like I started hammer throwing too. All right, here we go.
Oh! Can I try that again?
Yeah, you better. All right. So, I mean, that was, if you didn't hear, she tripped, fell down, and instantly, before she even finished hitting the ground, she goes, "Oops, can I try that again?" Like, I mean, to me, that is hammer throwing.
That's hammer throw.
Yeah. And so it's probably going to be us podcasting or whatever, YouTubing or whatever we're doing now. We're probably going to be pretty bad at it. And hey, as long as we have a good time, we want to keep trying again. That's the goal.
We try that again. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about what we're talking about: truth hygiene.
Oh yeah, back to truth hygiene.
Because it's pretty important to me that this has an educational aspect to it, which means I want to make sure we're getting the right information out there to people. That being said, I want to make sure we can have a free-flowing conversation and not feel we're not scientists, we're not journalists, we're a couple of hammer thrower buddies talking about the good old days, probably for a lot of this. And I just want to make sure that we are as helpful and productive and valuable to the people listening. And so, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that yeah, the truth is always good. And we talked about this before we started recording. I feel like that, and you and I have talked about this before, that, and you maybe didn't want me to say it, but I think that we're sort of the proof. I don't think sort of. I think that we are the proof of the Stuart Tober approach to hammer throwing. I was with Stuart for twice as long as you were, and you were with Stuart for twice as long as anybody else, roughly speaking. And so the things that we're going to talk about, that's what they're based on, along with the things that we've experienced in coaching as individuals. So and you said it before, we don't really have a motive other than to get this stuff out here. And for everybody listening, Adam's been bugging me for about 3 or 4 or 5 years to do this. And for some reason, I've always been a little bit hesitant, and I'm not really sure why. I love talking about the hammer once I start doing it. Maybe it's like going to I call it the spirogyra effect in my relationship with my wife, Nancy. The first spring we were together, there was this band, this was in 1985, and there was this band called Spirogyra, okay? And I don't know what kind of music it was. It was this weird stuff with different instruments. And I was from Wyoming and Montana. You had George Strait, you had the Beach Boys, and you had Zeppelin, really, Aerosmith. So this stuff, all this really jazzy, weird stuff. But I'm young, and I've got this new friend, and she wants to go so I'm going to go. And I enjoyed it. Now, I'm never going to go back again, but I enjoyed it while I was there. And so this is what I call the spirogyra effect. And there's things, and Stuart used to do this when he would get ready to go to a clinic. He hated getting ready to go to a clinic. He would try to back out any way that he could. And then once he got there, it was just, brilliance, right? And so I guess I'm a little bit the same way. Is getting into it is one thing, and then once you're here and talking about it, yeah, let's do it. I have no ulterior motive other than to try to get people off of their right leg in the hammer throw, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be cool if, because there's American hammer throwers are throwing really far right now.
Yeah.
It would be cool. It would be cool if what we said helped. It would be cool if more youth got throwing hammer. There's a bunch of positive things that come out of it. I just want to make sure that in us trying to do the right thing, we don't do the wrong thing.
Yeah. Right? Oh, I know why I want to do it now. I don't have the American record anymore.
Oh, there we go.
So now I'm not giving it away. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, or now you can say that, yeah, they went to gotten that American record. It wasn't for our podcast. That's what did it.
See, no. he wouldn't have got the America if it wasn't for the hammer cage that I built. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. And so I think that we have no motivation to say or try to skew this thing in any way, except the way that we think is truthful and honest and useful.
Yeah, and even with that, we probably have biases. We're probably
sure.
I mean, I don't know, but but you're right. Our motivations are just to, try to get the best information out there. So I was thinking, how can we break this up into categories? Because I do think it's valuable to wonder and hypothesize and that sort of stuff. And I think that's what like Joe Rogan kind of got in trouble for on his podcast, because I enjoy his podcast because he just sits and wonders out loud. And it's really cool stuff to listen to. But when you're talking about like a vaccine or a pandemic and a vaccine, wondering kind of comes at there's a cost to it sometimes, Yeah. And I don't want to stop wondering, and I just want to make sure that we get the right stuff out there. Anyway.
So, okay, can I just interject right there? Yeah. Stay with your train of thought just to support that. And I lost it. No. So here's what I say to people when I do a clinic. Yeah. One of the first things out of my mouth is, okay, listen, we're going to be together for 3 days. You have a coach. Your coach has your best interests at heart. All I'm asking you to do is listen to me, try to do the things that I'm telling you for 3 days. Okay. If it helps, great. Go ahead. Hopefully your coach is here. He's going to see it helps, or she's going to see that it helps. And it is going to be worth something. If not, if you don't like it, if it doesn't work for you, it's 3 days. No big deal. Go on and do your thing. Right?
Okay. Here's my concern with that. After being a teacher that's taught a year on Zoom and getting no discernible feedback like I normally would in an in-person class.
Right.
There can be some issues where you're putting out one-way communication and you have no idea what's coming back. And so I think in other words, at a clinic, I can use much different language, or in my classroom in person, I can use much different language than I can on Zoom, because I need to be much more clear and explicit and that sort of stuff over Zoom, because I can't gauge what their reactions are to the information that I'm saying. And so there's a slight difference between clinics and something like this.
Well, yeah, but then it's even more. Yeah, I get that, and then it's even more take it for its face value. One of the reasons, and again, here's a tangent. And we're going to lose people. We're not talking about cool stuff like how to swing the ball, but Stuart would never write anything down. And the reason was not that he was trying to hide anything or he didn't want to share anything. He was very, very consistent. All Stuart wanted to do is figure out the best way to throw the hammer. Mm-hmm. And he wouldn't sleep. He'd come into practice sometimes. You remember, I didn't sleep last night. I was trying to fix your throw. And so he just wanted this thing to grow and develop to where, I mean, he didn't even know really where it was going ultimately, because till the very end, he was trying to change it. You got a completely different start than I got. And part of that was because we're completely different athletes, but it's also because his understanding of everything about it, the technique, the physiology, everything about it was changing and growing. Yeah. And so this is a vehicle, I think, that can be used for that. And I think that the danger is, I'll give you an example. I won't use a name, but I did a clinic once. And this was when I was, people kind of looked up to me and kind of took what I said as gospel, kind of maybe. But I said something about, I like to wear tight shoes because then you can feel the ground better, right? So the next year, or maybe months later, I don't know, I'm really good friends with the coach that set this thing up, this clinic up. And she called and she said, Lance, can you help me? I got a thrower that listened to you about tight shoes, and he's at size 12 and he's jamming himself into size 10 and a half, and he can't move. He can't do, it's killing him. Could you maybe call him and talk to him? So, and then the other thing is all the platitudes are coming out. Okay, guys. So the other thing is I truly believe that there's 2 or 3 things that you have to do right in the hammer to throw far. And there's 10 ways to do each one of them. So if we don't have the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th ways and you do, great, good for you. As long as you're staying in the middle and using the ball, I don't care.
Yeah. And I firmly believe that I'm going to keep arguing with you about that.
Great.
Yeah. So this is what I was thinking. Like, I think we should, when we talk about things, I think it's totally valid for anything that's historical. We can just say it like, hey, this is what we did. When in 96, when I won a silver medal, this is how I did things, right? That's totally valid. And I think that's good information. That's good, high quality information from the source, right? Okay. And so I think all that stuff is valid. If you want to say, well, there wasn't iPhones back then, so now that's invalid. Some of that is actually true, I think, too. Like, I think Stuart's coaching would have been way different had he had an iPad. You know, he was always playing around with those camera and TV setups, like at practice. I was thinking about this the other day, like, what technology gizmo would kind of change the way Stuart coached? And I think
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But anyway, there could be differences now between back in the 90s, as my kids say. Dad, was that how it was back in the 90s?
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah, 30 years ago.
Yeah. And so there could be differences now that does change how throwing works or how coaching would work. And that could be valid. But so I think it's fine if we say anything historical, this is what we did. I think anything we state as a fact, we kind of have to back up with some sort of source. For example, we're talking about like the general adaptation syndrome. Okay, well that's about every single physiology textbook. And so we can assume that there's a general adaptation syndrome, and according to that, it says 90 minutes is going to be the optimal length of practice. Okay, I think that's fine. I think we talk about any sort of experiences like we've had. I guess that's kind of a historical thing. And then I think we can go ahead and talk about, I wonder if this is true, and try to, if we're not sure something is true, it doesn't fall into that fact with a source or a historical reference. I think it is totally valid for us to like wonder about it and say, I think this is probably true, kind of almost hypothesize, like, I think this is true, and this is why I think it's true, and this sort of stuff. But those can be areas of conversation and debate and that sort of stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know how this can go forward if we can't say this is why we think this way.
Right. Yes.
These are our supporting arguments for our beliefs about this, and there is no other proof for some of this stuff. In fact, it flies in the face, and I mentioned it before. The big one for me right now, and watching people talking about it and people coaching it, and then watching their throwers do it, is getting over their front leg. And so for right-handers, getting it's having the focus of rotation on the left leg. It's absolutely I'll try to use your language, but it's absolutely in my experience completely wrong and backwards. Because discus throwers get over their left leg.
I Okay. Do you want to watch a video of my son throwing?
Yeah, let's do it.
So what you're talking about being on for a right-handed thrower, you need to have the weight on your right leg, right?
It has to, well, ultimately it's in between your feet.
Sure.
And it's the axis of rotation is towards your back leg. So for a right-hander, that's your right foot, your right leg.
Yeah. And so let me just real quick talk to you about like how I went out there and coached my kids, because this is something that's kind of important to me. I'm coaching my kids. The last time I tried to coach my son was like when he was playing football like 3 years ago, like little flag football thing.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to tell him like how to hold a football and throw it.
Uh-huh.
Right. I put him in tears in like 5 minutes. And you know, I'm not like a overbearing, like, I'm like, anyway, it just put him in tears. And so, and Stuart was a very unique, gruff, gritty, demanding.
Yeah.
Do you have better adjectives that are appropriate for a wider audience?
This might be. I've thought a lot about this. Ruthless.
Yeah, I think so.
In a pure form, because ruthless in common form is a negative, and he just would not stop.
Yeah.
Until you did it right.
Yeah. It was purist. He was a purist and demanding, and I think ruthless is a good way to do it. He was also caring, and like I always felt he had my best interest in mind. Anyway. So I had to go. So my goal for this practice was I was going to go in and I had to coach. I had to coach the principals, but I had to do it as a loving, caring father, not a coach, a collegiate coach, high school coach. And so what I did is I just let him through. The only thing I established was safeties. I told him, I'm just going to coach you on safety stuff. If I see you doing anything unsafe, I'm that's when I'm going to go in and stop you. Other than that, you guys figure it out. If you guys want a coaching tip, ask me. And or I'll ask you if you want a coaching tip. But if you don't, if you're happy doing what you're doing, just keep going. It was great. And they want to do it again now every Sunday. But let's see if I can find this clip of my son throwing, because what we're going to see here. There it is. So he starts out, he's going to wind completely over his left leg. Okay. And again, I'm not teaching them anything. They know basically that you have to turn around when you throw the hammer, and that's about it.
Okay.
He's going to wind it over his left leg. He's going to turn around once, and he shifts his weight completely over to on his right leg instinctively. All right. Let's see if we can see this.
Do you think after with eyes we should get something to eat?
Yeah, they're talking about getting something to eat. See how it's all left turns and it goes back. Nice
throw.
Yeah, that's not too bad, right?
It's a little choppy. I can't really see a lot. It's pretty choppy.
Oh, really? Shoot.
But what I saw was he was balanced at the release.
Yeah, and so let's see if I'll try to just scrub through. Does that seem okay?
That's better, yeah.
Yeah, so he's winding it all the way over his left. He even takes a good drop step there.
Yeah.
So now he's turning, but he instinctively has to sit back on his right to release. Like, that's, in order to get a throw, he had to sit back there.
Yes.
To even try to release it.
Right.
Which is kind of cool. That's that principle that you're just saying. Like, he started out completely wrong, and he just instinctively had to get back on that right leg.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Does that apply a little bit?
Yeah. And we would do stuff like that. We would, okay. Oh, so you want to bend over at the start? All right. So go ahead and do a walk around with the weight on the ground, and it can't come off the ground. The weight has to roll on the ground for 360 degrees twice or three times, and then you can put your foot down and start turning. and it's almost like, I'll give you something to cry about.
Yeah.
But what it does is it's super compensation. That's what he would call it, is, get it way out there, so that's not really going to work. And when he came into this country, everybody was on their front leg. That's what I call it, to get rid of the left and right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So their front, the leg that's not supposed to come off the ground. Everybody was on that. They used to call it my East Coast training partners. My first year would make fun of the guys out the old school guys on the East Coast, and they'd say, a newspaper under your arm and a penny in between your butt cheeks. And if either one of them drops, you're doing it wrong. That's what Stewart was fighting when he came in. And so of course he's gonna overcompensate, and all you can do is push the ball with your backhand. And
neither one of us are advocating for newspapers or pennies as appropriate training tools.
Way to disclaim. What is that? The truth hygiene. Yes.
Yeah, that's a bad idea. That's a bad idea.
Yeah. Because newspapers lie. No. Might have to edit that. So anyway, the point is some people think, and I run into them that trained with Stewart early on, and it's all about putting your turning foot down and pushing the ball as hard as you can around in a circle. Yeah, we did that. We did that until I threw 78 meters.
Yeah.
And I blew up a rib trying to do that. And at that point, it's like, okay, so that's probably as far as you can throw doing that technique. And then we started shifting to the front leg a little bit. If you watch my first American record, which I guess is the only video, I don't have my second one, but I'm wearing a knee sleeve on my right leg, and I'm left-handed, everybody remember. And so all that was for then was just to remind myself to feel that knee on my first turn.
Yeah.
I started using it because we shifted over a little bit shifted over onto that leg. And my knee got sore because I wasn't used to it.
Yeah.
But again, we weren't thinking about pivoting and putting all of our weight and making the axis of rotation on that front leg. We were just getting it more in the middle because we've been clear over here on the left forever and a day. And so what that did is it sped up, it got it just like, and here's the point, it gets everything in between your feet and you can turn faster. If you're over one way or the other, you can't turn as fast. You're out of position. The axis is wrong.
So my first year, Stewart had me keep as a right-handed thrower, I was supposed to keep my left knee hooked up with the ball.
Right.
So
what year was that?
That would have been 98, okay. 99. And so, but his reasoning for that was to just learn the rotation part of the throw. And it was just, and so it was shifted over that front leg a lot more. He says, and then he's saying, well, once you can go around, and these were completely flat throws. Like there's no height on them. And I wasn't moving across the ring very much. It's like, they were just round with not a whole lot of direction. In order to get direction and then ultimately height after that, I had to sit back on the right leg. Like it was an immature throw. It was just teaching one component of the throw, and then you have to kind of shift over. So
yeah, so it was just exactly the opposite of my experience, in that because you didn't have an experience of either the classic, old school drag technique, or in my case, I was a discus thrower. I was really, really good at getting over my right leg in the back of the ring. And so he had to treat us differently.
Yeah. And I was exceedingly weak.
And I was exceedingly strong. I never got stronger once I got to Eugene. I was as strong as I've ever been, with the exception of a clean and a snatch, because I never really did them in college. But I never got stronger.
Right. And so I think a lot of that, you know, I was using that front leg to kind of help keep my hips from like rotating ahead. I could just lock everything in. I could lock my heel, my knee, my hip, and keep it aligned with the ball as I was learning how to turn. And I could see there's value in that. It's just gonna be a really round, flat throw with barely any direction to it. And you're almost just looking for balance through the throw, balance and stability. So I don't know. That's cool.
And the ball was in front of you. The most important thing about the whole deal was the ball was in front of you.
Yes.
It was in front of that knee.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Now that was the whole. Yes. And so I was learning how to push the ball, and I'd push it to my left knee and then turn with the ball on the left knee. Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah. And then as I got better, I think there's this one day that he came in, was like, all right, you're ready to do this now. And then that was done.
I used to, so my college coach, Mike Carrigan, was really, really great coach, but we didn't have hammer. And so when I got out here in '85, I would call back every week. Like, okay, what are you doing now? What are you doing now? This went on for years. And one time he finally got really upset. He goes, no, wait. You just said the exact opposite the week before. And it's like, yeah, it changes. So if we're in these conversations and we say one thing with complete conviction, then and the next week we say the exact opposite with complete conviction, both of them are true, in my opinion.
Well, so, and I'll make sure, so I saw that. So I posted, there's actually more views on that skills pyramid thing that we recorded. And so I'll post that up at the same time, because I think that skills pyramid is a nice way of framing that up, where it's not, you know, to get an ultimate peak performance, there's a whole bunch of skills underneath it that you have to learn and adapt in certain ways. So the hammer being a two-handed event, it's going to rely on both sides of the body more intimately than the one-handed throwing events. And so you are going to keep going back and forth from emphasizing a left side and a right side and that sort of stuff. And then to build on that, Koji sent me a study, our friend Koji Murafushi, who's a training partner and friend and gold medalist. And he did the artwork for this, by the way, which is cool. That's a Koji Murafushi original. So he sent me a study that he did, and it's this really cool study that was talking about the role of external cues on muscle firing. And so he took this like round plastic cylinder. Patients would take this round plastic cylinder, and they would just do an isometric squeeze on this hard round plastic cylinder. They'd measure the muscle activation of the upper body. And then they have these like toy rice paper balloons in Japan. And the subjects were instructed to squeeze the rice paper balloon as hard as they could without deforming it. And that external cue of squeeze as hard as you can without deforming the balloon activated the antagonist muscles to the squeezing muscles, right? Which doesn't quite make sense to me. You were told to squeeze something, you shouldn't be activating the antagonist muscles. The muscles are going to oppose the squeezing action, but that's exactly what happened with those external cues, right? And so anyway, the point is, Stuart I think he did this a lot. He would say certain stuff to us to get us to do something. And it might not have been the actual biomechanical definition of what was going on. He was trying to get us to perform a movement by using external cues, like a coach should, to get us to perform the actual correct movement. Look at that. Yeah. We brought in research on this, but this is a heck of a first episode. We got tangents, videos. Probably told people to stay off the front leg. Brought in real research. Name dropped. Oh, we're doing great.
The only thing that's missing right now is some arcane reference to 1970s, 80s pop culture.
You can bring up Buckaroo Banzai. There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, let's
we'll let that one marinate for a while.
No, we did talk about Star Wars.
We did talk about Star Wars.
That was in the 70s.
Yeah. And so actually, after I mentioned the Joseph Campbell stuff, we went and watched episode 4, and we picked out all the little bits of the hero myth that show up in episode 4. Like, look, they cross a threshold. See, they swing across the gap there. They're actually crossing a literal threshold.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Classic.
Blowing my daughter's mind.
And then Jar Jar Binks came and ruined it all.
I have students that love Jar Jar Binks. He's like the favorite character. It's just, they hit episode 1 was there when they were kids, and they just, you don't know better as a 2-year-old or whatever whenever you start watching that. Anyway. I think, I think whoever there at the Lucas Films, I think they should actually talk to you, because they didn't develop this like black dark saber gets heavier. They should talk to you. You would be an expert on this.
You got to throw it like a light bulb.
Yeah. How do we get you in contact with Lucas Films here with Disney?
I don't know.
Neither do I. With the 3 people that watch this, I'm sure one of them will know how. But
Koji might be able to, maybe not me.
Oh, you're probably right. That'd be fun.
And he actually has a very, and I won't give it away because I promised I wouldn't, but he had a very unique version, because we talked a lot about it when he first started coming over here. And I would say just that, I would pretend that I was throwing a 4K. And just decide. It's just like with the weight, you decide the weight is lighter than the hammer, and it is really when you do the physics work of a 35-pound ball 16 inches away versus a 16-pound ball 4 feet away. I think the forces are greater with the hammer than they are with the weight. It's just that it freaks you out when you pick it up, right? So I would always imagine that the weight was light. And I would always try to throw the 16 like a 4K. And Koji has his own very, very similar version to that. That is really, really interesting. That we both figured out that way to make the thing go faster.
So that by the way, the hammer versus weight debate is something you should weigh in on at some point in these episodes.
Oh yeah.
Because I've heard some other hammer throwers on podcasts saying like the weight hurts the hammer, shouldn't be thrown the weight in college or that sort of stuff. And so especially for like Midwest people at Midwest schools, like in Iowa, what other option do you got? It's 12, you live in a frozen wasteland in the wintertime. Like what if you're throwing it in Minnesota, I competed at Minnesota in the wintertime at an indoor meet. It's cold, it's chilly. And so
it's a little brisk.
Yeah. And so I mean your training options are going to be indoors. And so I think American hammer throwing, if there can be a way of throwing the weight that helps the hammer, which there is.
Yes, there is. Absolutely.
Like I think that in and of itself would help American hammer throwing tremendously.
Well, I think in its very simplest form, you can't just throw one ball, right? Even if you don't throw the weight, you don't just throw the 16, or you don't just throw a heavy ball. And there's examples of failures in that all over the place. And so you have to move around. You have to change hammers, change lengths, change weights. We were fortunate enough to be out here, and in a fairly mild climate where we could still throw hammers. And I don't know if you ever did, but I never threw more than, there was one season where I threw more than 10 to 15 throws twice a week with the weight ever. So I hardly, once the season that I threw the world record, the 84.10, we threw it 20 throws twice a week. And that was inside of a 150 throw a week.
Yeah.
So usually it was 10 or 15 throws on Tuesday and Friday.
Yeah, I never did with Stewart. I mean, so there, when I was at Oregon, I had, well, here's another good point of the podcast too, or whatever we're doing. And so when I was at Oregon, I had 4 coaches in 5 years. I was working with a kid over the summer who went to a college, and the coach that recruited him isn't there anymore. And so anyway, I think getting some common hammer knowledge out there to where anybody can use, I think will help athletes too. But we threw weight 10 times. I mean, 10 times, and you go throw hammers. Yeah. And Stewart was very explicit. It was a drill. It was a drill for the hammer.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Yeah. And I had the school record out Oregon in the weight throw, but it was a drill for the hammer.
Well, the same thing happened with Brittany Henry. Brittany Henry was 5'8" or 9" and weighed 145, 150 maybe, and she threw the weight like 68, 67 feet. Yeah. Right at the very end, she was hopeless up until the last couple of meets. But then it finally clicked, and we never threw. The thing is, you can throw the weight like a weight, or you can throw the weight like a hammer. And if you throw the weight like a hammer, it helps you. If you throw the weight like a weight, you might as well just go throw the shot.
Right.
If you want to make your hammer better.
Well, and if you want to score some points, I think what happens is, as a program, if you want to score some points at indoor nationals, let's say, take your big strong shot putter, teach them how to 2-turn it, and just huck it. And those throwers are going to score points at the nationals meet. Like, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. It's just that if you're a hammer thrower, you can compete with those guys by throwing it like a hammer. I mean, I don't know. You can even set the world record doing it.
You can.
Yeah. Go figure.
So, but you just have to maintain the same ideas that you're trying to throw the hammer with. And the only thing that I would say that is different with the weight, that you have to do with the weight, and here's real life. We've been talking about all sorts of weird black saber stuff, but here, which is great, but here's, I didn't mean that in a bad way, but here's real life concrete advice for anybody out there that's trying to throw the weight. The only thing that's different, in my opinion, about throwing the weight, the only thing that I had to do differently than what I did with the hammer, is you have to physically, purposefully keep it flatter.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So it helps if you can cast it around to start it, you can walk around to start it, you can wind it to start it, you can put it up here and sling it to start it. Doesn't really matter, because you can accelerate this thing in 2 turns. Just like you said, you get a big old guy and you go whop, whop, and it's full speed. It's so fast. But the thing is it has to start from the same similar orbit that the hammer is, which is a lot flatter.
Do you think that speaks to that there is the weight actually does have less of a moment than the hammer. Like, I mean, a moment as in the physical term. Like it's harder to, it's easier to actually push the weight around than it is the hammer.
Yeah, if you're in position.
Right. Well, even if you're not in position. And so therefore it's easier to cut the corner off the hammer to shorten the radius by dropping it or lifting it or that sort of stuff. Like you really have to make sure that your entry is more, has the radius it needs to keep the system going correctly.
In the weight?
In the weights, because it's easier to cheat. And so you can keep, if you keep it flatter.
Oh yeah.
The radius will be more correct and keep the whole system of the throw going through the whole throw. Right. Whereas because it's easier to kind of cheat around, you could lift that left shoulder, drop it, and twist inside of it.
Drop it to your back hip and look around and go, oh yeah, there's a sector. Wham!
Yeah. And ironically, it's because it's easier to throw than the hammer. Right? The hammer makes it harder. Yeah, because the hammer, you can use a good wind to help keep it flat at the start. Because there's more momentum that you don't need to think about as much. Because the weight is easier to throw than the hammer, you could you could get impatient and shortcut and muscle it at the start. Yeah.
And it's also it exacerbates the fact that it's shorter and it is heavy. Let's not be too weird about it. It's heavy. And if you let it drop in front of you, it's going to pull you over. Right. So those two things combined, about you can be a little bit loosey-gooseier with it, and the fact that it'll pull you right over if you let it, then yeah. But if you can do those two things, if you can not cheat by cutting off the first corner, and if you can keep your posture, then you can throw the weight, which is the two things that you have to do right: posture and timing.
Or I mean, even what you just said is like really focus on keeping it flat. Because I see when I've coached the weight, the most common way of kind of cheating around the weight is to put it high in the air. Like if you add an height to it that's not natural in the development of the throw, that's how they athletes will put it up high and then kind of like twist inside to step underneath. And so if you think about keeping it flat, that's probably a nice little cue to help keep that radius.
Yeah. And the basic tenet, one of the basic tenets that Stuart talked about really early, and I don't know if he ever talked to you about this, is the horizontal plane is the I'm going to lose it. If you get too steep, you can't add power to it.
Right.
And that's true with the weight or the hammer.
Well,
it's easier to get the weight steep, so it's easier to not be able to put any power on it.
Well, it's a vector, right? So every degree that you put the hammer up, it's taking away from your vector heading out in the
right
out. And so if you put the hammer up really high, yeah, you're putting a lot of force going the wrong way, essentially. Yeah. And so and it's a shorter radius that you're working with.
Right.
So you have to keep it flat.
And some people might say, well, and not incorrectly, that the only real power that you have is straight up, is normal force away from the center of the earth. So why don't we just snatch the whole? I had a friend of mine. He was actually my mentor, Tom Gage, got me into hammer throwing. He was the last Olympic finalist before Judd and me in '92. He made the final in 72, 76, 72. And he saw me throw when I threw the American record for the first time at Princeton and I kept hitting the net on the ceiling, he called me and says, I got it. I know exactly what you're doing. You're getting in a position, you're just trying to snatch it as hard as you can every single turn. It's like, no, I'm trying to do the opposite of that. That's just what it looks like. So there is some argument that the forces that we can apply are in the vertical plane. That's the way we're strong. We're strong in a squat, we're strong in a clean, we're strong in a snatch. But you can't do that and have a good throw. You have to temper that strength. That's why you don't have to be a monster to throw the hammer.
Well, yeah, that's how a Ferris wheel works too, right? Or like a merry-go-round. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that okay, the only reason it works is because the forces are ultimately tied to the ground. But there's a whole bunch of things where the forces are tied to the ground that that work in ways that baffle the mind. I mean, yeah. I don't think it's that complicated to think like, oh yeah, okay, we can use force directed to the ground to make something go around.
Have you, and I don't know this stuff, I just see these
things.
Like
I'm just
the gyroscope thing.
Yeah.
Where if you spin a gyroscope, you can suspend it from one side and the resulting forces make it go around the other way.
Yeah.
90 perpendicular from the rotation of the thing.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody ought to study that.
They have. It's kind of how bicycles.
As it relates to the hammer?
I don't know about that. Yeah, I think you got to spin really, really fast.
Oh, I spun really, really fast.
No, you didn't. You did not. That's the cool thing about watching your American record is, I mean, I think I pulled up Koji's 2000 video throwing the hammer. He was spinning really fast in 2000. You were not. You looked like you're in a walk at the park until like the last throw, and then it launches off your hands.
I got long arms.
Yeah. Yeah, just beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Shoot, there was something I was gonna say and I lost it.
Gyroscopes, rocket ships, Ferris wheels. Rocket ships. What if you put rocket ships on the Ferris wheel?
I do think so. So the hammer is kind of interesting in that. And I brought this up with Brian Castor, who is a biomechanics hammer thrower guy from Western University.
Great guy.
Oh yeah. Oh, he's phenomenal. And so I had him on during distance learning when I didn't know what to do. So I was just calling up people to interview him. And I was talking to him about the forces of the hammer. And so he uses, it's like use centripetal force to help build, or angular momentum essentially, right? To build up velocity in the hammer.
Okay.
And that causes centripetal force, right? It's the hammer starts pulling on you. Okay. And if you compromise your posture, it's going to slow the whole system down, right? You're not going to get as good a throw.
Right.
And so the same force that you're trying to create in the hammer is trying to break apart the system at the same time. You're trying to create angular momentum. The more angular momentum you create, the harder it is to stay in the middle of the throw. And if you spin fast enough, the angular momentum is what's going to destroy the posture, is what's going to end up pulling you out and destroying the throw. And so it's this wonderful balancing act of trying to use the forces that are ultimately going to destroy the throw, which means
that's why it's not linear.
Yeah. And George Lucas needs to call you, because if that's not Star Wars type stuff, I don't know what is.
I walked into Brian's office once. He's like, Brian, look it. Here's the thing. I just figured it out. I weigh 250 pounds. The hammer weighs 16. So I walk into the ring and I'm 250 pounds. And I start throwing the hammer, and then suddenly I'm 266 pounds. And through the ring, I'm still 266 pounds. And then when I let it go, I'm back to 250. I don't need any strength at all. There's no net gain. And I just about blew his mind.
Yeah, I remember. So in physics class, when I was learning about the speed of light for the first time, I calculated how far I could throw a hammer if I vaporized 1 pound of fat from my body. It converted 1 kilogram of mass from my body, how far I'd be able to get the hammer.
Wow.
I think it shoots it to like Jupiter pretty quick or something. Like it's a hefty. Yeah.
But that's the thing, is it's first of all, it's impossible.
Right.
It's completely to throw 16 pounds for a human being. I don't care who you are. From the goal line of a football field to the other 10-yard line. That's impossible. That's 16 pounds.
Yeah. And you did it.
Presumably. Allegedly.
There's video. They measured with the steel tape and everything.
Yes, they did. But I don't know. Sometimes I don't believe it. It's weird when you think about it that way.
Well, and what you said, like, how long is the path of the hammer?
Oh, I don't know. So, going around?
Yeah.
Like, well, you figure, maybe the handle is 3 feet from the axis of rotation.
Sure.
And the axis of rotation that's another kind of thing that we maybe talk about sometime. The axis of rotation is like an inch from your sternum, give or take, right? Depending on how heavy you are and how weight the hammer.
Yeah.
So a really big woman, the axis of rotation might be inside of her body. Koji's obviously farther away because he weighed 215 pounds throwing 83 meters or 84 meters. And I was 260 throwing, 82 meters. But it's not that far. You don't have to kill yourself sitting back to make this thing, to do this thing that you're talking about, counteracting the centripetal force to get some more angular momentum. It's not that hard, but it's really cool because it's not a linear progression. And my point was,
we're talking about the radius, or sorry, the path of the hammer. Like how many linear feet is it possible to accelerate the hammer for?
Does the ball go around? So you figure what? So it's a 3 foot from the axis of rotation to your hands, and the hammer's 4 feet long. So 7 feet, 7 foot radius, 2 pi r. It's like 42 feet. Yeah.
42 feet.
Something
so what's kind of interesting, like you don't have to accelerate. I mean, if you could accelerate it for that entire path, it's not that much force that you're applying.
Right.
To throw it really far.
Right.
I mean, you can't accelerate it for the whole time. For all 360 degrees of each rotation. But the longer you can accelerate it for, the less strength you need. I mean, that's how you can get away with being kind of a weak athlete and
do it a whole bunch of times.
Yeah.
So it's like 35 feet, and you're doing it 4.5 times, right, in a 4-turn throw. If you don't count the winds, let's count the winds. Let's say it's 7 times. Really, it's 6.5 times.
Well, I think the winds, maybe you just have a starting velocity at the start of the throw. I don't know. I'm not sure how you do that. Because why would you count well, never mind if it's strength, right? Yeah, why not? Do an easy first wind, big second wind, right? And yeah, you're right.
I've got 292.5 feet.
What?
So you're actually throwing the ball farther than it flies during a 4-turn hammer.
You could just carry it out there.
Yeah, just carry. And this is where the what is it? Truth hygiene. Yeah. Somebody check those numbers.
Well, I mean, yeah. So yeah, the numbers, I guarantee. Neither Lance or I are a math magician, And so
I prefer to call them mathletes.
actually, well, you're an engineer. You should.
I'm not an engineer.
Well, you're. I don't know. Close.
I'm the same as you. I'm not even the same as you. I want to be an exercise physiology major. They didn't have it at Montana State. But before I forget, let's go back to that 45 feet per rotation.
Yeah.
All y'all out there that want to play with this, go outside, walk off 45 feet and take anything, a ball, a clump, a roll of tape, whatever, and lob it. Because we're not killing ourselves. We're not throwing this thing as hard as we can. So, if you're a speedball pitcher, it doesn't count. You got to just kind of throw it. But do this drill where you go out, you find 45 feet away from you, you toss something to that 45 feet and see if you can gain some sense of how long it takes to get there. It takes a long time for something to get 45 feet.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And we're just going around in one circle. And if you think about how fast you can turn around, you can always beat the hammer. So you just got to slow down.
Oh, I like that. So how long it takes for just something to fly through the air 45 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, then put that in a circle, and that's how fast you're turning.
That's how long it takes to go.
You're right. That'd be the amount of time it would take to turn around. I like that.
Without compromising the radius.
Right.
You can do it faster, but you compromise the radius.
Right. And for angular momentum, radius is the most important factor.
Yes.
It's radius squared somewhere in that equation, I think. Yeah.
That's why it's not linear. It's exponential.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. Well, and the other thing is but okay, there's also it's really difficult in that, so I was a sprints coach the last couple of years. And so and it makes total sense to me once I read it, but 60% of the acceleration in the 100 meters happens in the first step out of the starting blocks.
I didn't know that. I knew it was in the first part of the race. I knew it's just movements.
But that makes sense, right? Of course, first step, 60% of the acceleration, right? And I think it's by 20 meters, you're close to top speed.
Yeah, they always used to say that's why Carl Lewis, that was his strength, is he slowed down the least.
Right.
At the end of the race. Yeah.
And I think that's true. Even of Usain Bolt, I think that's also true, but I'm not sure. And so you got to think the hard part of the hammer isn't necessarily doing the acceleration, right? Because I think humans are pretty good accelerating. It's that patience and holding the radius as it's moving around. That is a trick that as human beings, we're not very good at. I think that's the hard part.
The hammer's really easy. It's really hard to make it easy.
Yeah. That's a great way of saying it. Well, shoot, we've been talking for an hour and a half.
That should do it.
I think that should do it. We didn't get into any of my weird links to education, but we'll get there. We'll get there. This is fun.
All right.
I think we did well. How about this? You know what? I have a special email set up so I set up a Gmail. And so if anyone does hear this and you want to email us with questions or high praise, or if you want to send us videos or whatever, if you want to, I want this to be as much of a conversation as possible. And I want to get differing opinions. I want people to ask questions. I want kind of what people are thinking. So if you want to email us a question, please do. The email is Hammergarten, HAMMERGARTEN USA @gmail.com. I had to put the USA in there because apparently Hammergarten's a place in Germany. So,
Man, I don't know what that's like.
yeah. And so email us any questions or comments you guys have. I guess you're supposed to like and subscribe or something. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing as far as YouTube goes.
And just so you know, if you tell me I'm wrong, I'm going to tell you you have a lumpy butt. There's my reference. Somebody will get the reference. You're wrong. Well, you got a lumpy butt. Okay. So those of you guys playing, you can edit that out if you
want. No, I don't want to edit any of this. I'm just throwing this stuff up on YouTube. I'm not. Are you kidding me?
Monday afternoon live.
That's right. So anyway, we'll that's kind of, I think it frames up what we're trying to do here pretty well. And then we'll talk about more stuff next week. This is fun.
Great. Yeah.
Oh, and I tried to get really nice podcasting equipment and nice microphones for us. Apparently the whole world is sold out of podcasting stuff. We are not the first people with this idea. I think everybody had this idea at the same time. So.
Oh, okay. I gotta get cooler background. You got cooler background than I
do. Mine's my garage wall.
I do have a shot put rolling down a shot return at Hayward Field.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
it looks like the Earth.
It does look like the Earth. I thought that's what it was. Anyway,
it's a shot.
Okay.
Anyway, all right.
All right. Lance.
Bye, y'all. Hope you liked it.